Uh, Kathleen, this is, we have this slated for a hearing. Do I need to open up differently or because we finished the budget?
Yes, so you adjourned the hearing yesterday. This was a
Okay.
placeholder in case we didn't. So this is just strictly council time.
Okay. Opening council time then for Wednesday, November the 18th. And is there any, I'm just wondering if any further public testimony came in. I guess we adjourned and we did pass the budget, but just want to make sure we're covering that.
We have not received any additional public comment regarding the budget hearing.
Okay, so I would ask to do old business first and starting with the minutes from November 4th. Move a motion, please, to approve.
Move to approve.
Second. It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the last meeting. All in favor without objection. Any objecting? Okay. Motion passes. Second item, contract amendments to COVID-19 relief grants to local franchise.
Good morning, Council. So we received a request from CREDC. As you know, of course, the Council appropriated about $8.5 million to go to small business economic grants. And that portion, that $8.5 million was for Greater Vancouver Chamber of Commerce and CREDC. There was also some additional funds for Fourth Plain Forward and Mercy Corps Northwest, but that's not what I'm speaking to this morning. So in the contracts as originally drafted and approved by the council, franchises were excluded from eligibility. But we heard recently from CREDC that there's a number of franchisees that are locally owned and operated, specifically within the childcare and the health and fitness businesses, that because of the way that the contracts are currently drafted, those businesses are ineligible. But CREDC made the point that they're really locally owned. These type of businesses are particularly hit hard. Childcare was one of the things that we wanted to focus on, but a number of those childcare establishments are franchises, so they're currently excluded. So what they're asking to do is to amend the contracts to allow them to be an eligible recipient. Obviously, the two entities are still going to take a look within the prior metrics and determine who is the most, who meets the criteria and should be awarded the grant and how much. They've received, Jennifer let me know this morning, they've received about 688 applications. If awarded the full amount, that would be $20.6 million. So clearly that there is a need in the community. Many of these applicants have already received some other public funding through the Paycheck Protection Program, other small business grants, but most are applying for the full $30,000. And a majority of the applicants are for-profits, but we are seeing nonprofits. And about 93% of these businesses are an entity that has a public-facing sort of a brick and mortar type of setup. And we're seeing a good cross-section. Majority of the applicants are coming, not surprisingly, from Vancouver, but then also Camas, Ridgefield, Battleground. But we're also seeing some applicants from Washougal, Brush Prairie, Amboy, and Yakult as well. So I wanted to put it to the council to see if you wanted to expand the eligibility to include those franchises with a prioritization for the health and fitness and childcare franchises. And if so, then give Kathleen the approval to execute those amendments.
Are there questions of the council?
Yeah, actually,
Councilor Alston?
Could you repeat? You said there were 688 applications representing how much of a request, total funding request?
I don't have the precise data for exactly how much they've asked, but if all 688 asked for the full 30,000, that would be 20.64 million. Okay. I do know that a majority of the applicants applied for the full amount, but I don't have the exact data.
Okay, all right. Be nice if we had that. So generally, as long as I would support expanding this to these local businesses. I think we focused on the restaurants as I think we should have, because they've been some of the hardest hit. But these folks are hard hit as well, especially now that these fitness and gyms and training facilities are now closed again. So So I would support expanding that, even though we're fighting over a limited number of dollars here.
My question would be, Lindsay, do you know, are there other types of franchises that have made applications for this that we might want to? I mean, I understand this other is an emphasis on that, but I'm curious about other types of locally owned but franchises. Do you have any information on that?
So the information that I got from CREDC is that their primary concern are the healthcare, the health and fitness, and the childcare, just because of the severity of the impact based on the COVID restrictions that these entities are facing. But I know that they've gotten a number of applicants from all types of franchises. And that's why the way the contracts amendment is drafted would still require that they be Clark County locally owned. It would require that the assistance go towards their franchise location that's here, or locations that are here in Clark County. They couldn't spread it across, all of their locations if they had more than one, and would give that prioritization to the health and fitness and childcare. But we've received more applications than just those two types.
Okay, other questions of the council?
Well, my only comment, I think Lindsay just answered. I wanted to keep the aperture as open as possible, whether from nonprofits. I hadn't intended to exclude franchises, but I do want the money to stay locally, so it's not go outside the county, and certainly county-owned franchises are the best target. So I'm in favor of this as well, expanding it within the money available.
I also think this is a change that makes all the sense in the world, so I'm supportive of it. I have a question that is related, but not about this specific proposal, which is that I'm wondering if staff could let us know. We don't need to know today unless you happen to have it, but if we do have any more flexibility of funds that we can appropriate from CARES funding, should once CRDC and the Chamber of Commerce have been able to evaluate these and determine how much is going out, clearly there's additional need. So wondering if we may have any additional flexibility to add more to this fund, if that's even a possibility.
And I can check with with Larry and Mark to get the numbers in terms of what, if anything, may be still available. The concern is that we have to have everything out the door by November 30th, of course. The good news is that the governor, when he announced the recent restrictions, did say that he was looking to put together a $50 million pot for small businesses. We don't have any details on what that looks like. But we've now solicited a large pool, and so we know that the entities that are requesting assistance. And in terms of being able to execute that, if that ends up coming through the counties or the EDCs, we now have a pool of people that money should be able to get out the door faster, if and when it arrives from the state, or of course, if Congress passes additional legislation, that will be more prepared to get that money out the door faster. So it's not perfect, but hopefully we're at least better positioned.
Lindsay, could I jump in for just a second? Counselor, we are wrapping up this initial round, and we will be bringing proposals to the council with what funding we may have and flexibility we will have. And there's several options that will be brought to you. So yes, there's a possibility that we may be able to do that, but we'll have to evaluate after we get this initial round wrapped up. So that's part of our plan.
Great, thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Mark.
Mark, is it still true that November 30th is the date? They have not moved. Congress has not moved that. Oh boy.
That's
Okay.
correct. Except for those funds that are going directly to the Department of Health through the State Department of Health. That deadline was extended to December 30th. So.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Motion to approve, Madam Chair.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded to approve the contract amendments for Greater Vancouver Chamber of Commerce and CREDC to allow them to issue COVID-19 economic relief grants to local franchises. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Lindsay.
I'll get these to Kathleen for her signature.
Okay, thanks. Moving on to 1.2, permit exempt agricultural buildings ordinance.
So on this one, you'll recall that we had a council time discussion and decided to send this back to the deed for one additional clarification. The question remaining was whether or not to allow permit exempt agricultural buildings only on parcel sizes that were 5 acres or more, or whether or not to allow them on non-conforming parcels that were at least an acre, but within the zones for which it should be 5 acres or more, but it's a non-conforming parcel. Really recognizing the fact that we have so many non-conforming lots, many of them are in very rural areas, but they might only be 1.5 acres or 2 acres. And so the deed weighed in on that earlier this month, and their recommendation was to allow it on those 1 acre parcels or larger in those non-conforming areas, or alternatively, 5 acres or more in any other zone. So if that's the direction that the council wants to go, this ordinance is drafted and ready, and we could put it on for hearing December 15th. Otherwise, we can make any other changes and also get it ready for the 15th, or continue to discuss it, but then we'd probably hold it until 2021.
Will you remind me what he'd said about having this only in the urban growth boundary?
So deed's recommendation was to allow the permit exemption to continue both within the urban growth area and outside the urban growth area. But the council's determination at the last council time meeting was to limit the permit exemption to only those areas outside the urban growth boundary. Those inside the urban growth boundary certainly could still build the structures, but they would require a permit. So that's the way the code is currently drafted.
I did read the code. I'm not in support of this at all, but the other counselors were. If there's a majority of counselors that want to move forward with it, that's fine. I do not support it.
But Madam Chair, may I make some additional comments? So I'm hoping that we all can reconsider this issue. So I want to be clear that I do favor allowing non-conforming lots, and I do favor allowing the ag exempt to continue on, whether within or without the urban growth area. There are a lot of rural properties within the urban growth areas that families and maybe handing it down may want to continue with, whether it's an equestrian use or hobby farm. You name it, they may want to continue, and the reasons for ag exempt should equally apply to them wherever situated. The issue with the blue factory is not one of where it was situated within the urban growth area or outside the urban growth area. This was simply a failure of approval. This was an enforcement issue. This was someone making a false declaration that they were qualified for ag exempt, and no diligence at all by any staff member to allow it to continue. So what I would rather see is in conformance with the recommendations we just heard re-summarized, that it still goes forward, but we need more emphasis on, instead of having some kind of certification by the landowner, we have a statement under penalty of perjury instead, that we have some kind of either virtual or at least rudimentary review by staff as to location and use, that it actually does conform and would apply for an ag exempt status. I mean, that's the real gravamen of the problem that we experienced with the blue building. It had nothing to do with the fact that it was within the urban growth area. It should never have been allowed within a rural one, or a residential one rather, in the location it was. There was no ag purpose, and I think any cursory review would have discovered that. So I think we're solving that problem with the wrong solution. So those are my comments. I'm asking for everyone to reconsider this because I think we need to preserve our rural areas, and the ag exempt law is a good one. It was just not applied properly with that one factory that was built.
Chair O'Brien, this is Kathleen. Can I make a comment?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I just want to provide some clarity from my understanding that based on the current code, the process that was followed for the blue building was followed and allowed under the current code. So while I know that there's some discrepancy regarding the purpose and what was communicated, the process that staff did follow was in line with the current code.
So I disagree with that. I don't know where that comes from. There was a false affirmation that it was an ag exempt use. It didn't fall into any of the current ag exempt purposes. So I'm not sure where that comes from, Kathleen. But if we could just change the certification to a penalty under perjury, that may help, and put some burden on the staff to confirm the use and that it qualifies for ag exempt. I think that's what we would be better served. Our rural property owners would be better served to keep ag exempt in place.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, John.
So I would agree that I think, yeah, the rural property owners are served by having this in place. And that's exactly what this ordinance does, is it keeps it in place for the rural ordinance. So I am supportive of moving it forward. I disagree that the blue building wouldn't have been an issue. It was only an issue because of potential misrepresentation or other issues along the process. The issue is the neighbors complained about it because they're in close proximity, which would not be the case in the rural area, which is exactly why these type of buildings are absolutely allowed to be built, but they need to be permitted within the urban growth boundary. So I'm supportive of this moving forward as it's written, because it will address the issues that led to the blue building.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. And this, if we were just to go, Councilor Medviji, with your line of reasoning, we could build any building inside the urban growth boundary in any zone as long as we put rakes and shovels in it, whether it's in a neighborhood or whether it's on a 1 acre parcel inside the urban growth boundary. And that's what we're trying to get away from. And that's what you've been talking with these neighbors for the last year and a half about, and supporting their position on this. I don't think this is a difficult stretch here to say we don't want these buildings without permits being built in our residential neighborhoods just because we say we've got a tractor inside. And that's what we're trying to get to here. And absolutely, we should have non-permitted ag structures in the rural areas, and I think this gets to that. But to continue to allow these unpermitted buildings inside our neighborhoods and residential areas, I just find, I'm just baffled by your logic here, but I support moving forward with this.
Yeah, so following my logic, you would not have had the blue building within that neighborhood. And so I'm not sure the reasoning that goes behind that.
Well, if somebody said I want a shovel and a rake, they can build the blue building.
Wait. Let's just have an orderly discussion here, please. Don't talk over anybody. So, Councilor Medviji, have you concluded your remarks?
So I just want to reemphasize that a change from certification to something more substantive, whether in or outside the urban growth area, you're still going to have these issues unless you put a modicum of burden on staff to confirm its applicability, and put the burden on the property owner to tell the truth, subject to penalty of law.
Councilor Olson?
Yeah, the only other thing, Kathleen, and maybe one of the things I want to make sure we maintain as we move forward with this is if somebody wants some sort of ag structure or permitted building inside the urban growth boundary, then obviously we've got parameters around that, but also that it's simple, that it's an easy process, and that it's an inexpensive process. So I just want to make sure we keep that keep that focus as well as we move forward potentially with this particular ordinance.
Yes, and that's something that the DEEP certainly has emphasized, that in my conversations with Mitch and Kathleen about making sure that, you know, that is a council priority. And so that's my understanding that that's how it will go.
Just the old adage that one bad circumstance makes poor law. And I really believe this came about because of one issue. And I know that a couple of you counselors that have spoken don't agree with that, but I just don't think that our ordinance needs to be changed. I think that there needs to be enforcement that these buildings are agricultural buildings. And I would agree with Councilor Medveji that they need to assert and, you know, basically testify to the fact under penalty of perjury that it will be used for agricultural uses. And inside the urban growth boundary, there are many rural situations inside the urban growth boundary. It is not all residential housing. So the arguments that have been made do not convince me that this is a necessary ordinance.
So I just have one more thing then, and we'll wrap this up from my perspective. If I certify under perjury of law that I'm going to build an ag building and I'm going to put my tractor and my rakes in there, and there's no other requirement other than that, then I can build any kind of building I want anywhere that I want. That's the problem. It still could build this blue building down the street here, and they could put a tractor and rakes in it and have it be considered an ag building. That's what we're trying to get away from. And if we have a large, more rural lot inside the urban growth boundary, they can build an ag structure, hopefully with a very simple permit process and a very low permit fee. So at least there's some sideboards around where they're being built. So I'm looking forward to seeing this at hearing.
Yeah.
And just as a follow-up to that there's no way to bind that statement on future owners. So someone could build an ag building, use it as such as they intended to do when they built it, and then sell the property. There's no way to enforce that unless you're putting a deed restriction, which is even more onerous than the process that we're talking about now on the building. So it does create issues. And if there's large parcels that aren't, well, I'll leave that point. But just as addition to what Councilor Olson was saying, there's no way to enforce these going forward.
Okay, well, do we have 3 counselors that want to move it forward?
Yes.
Okay, we'll move it
Ready
forward.
for hearing on the 15th of December.
Okay, new business, community planning 2021 work plan and decision making.
Oliver, you're currently muted.
I'm sorry. Good morning, councillors, and for giving me again the opportunity to come back to you for approval of our work program. If you recall, we had a work session with you on November 4th to go over our land use and transportation proposed work program for 2021. So what we have this morning, and at that work session, I indicated that I will come back to you for your approval of our work program. So unless you have questions for me, the metric that we have provided you is consistent with the list that you saw on November 4th. So we just have yes or no. So if there's any item that you believe we should not be working on, whether it's land use and transportation, you can say no, and that will be noted. The way that this is structured, as I indicated, is consistent with the draft work program that you saw on November 4th. You can see that we also included what is mandated and cited the RCW and our code that requires that, for example, those ongoing programs or commissions that we manage, that will continue to be the case. And all the projects that we have listed or we are working on, we also shows RCW or WAC that require us to do so. The only two projects that are still on hold is the freight rail, as well as the ag assessment. Those are the only two projects that are still on hold. So I will stop there and see if the council has any questions. You have always approved our work program. In this case, we have both land use and transportation that Rob Klug went over the transportation list with you. So I'm here to answer any questions that you may have, councillors.
Questions of the council? Councilmember.
Thank you. I was, I think it was before my time that the investigation into agricultural impacts, ag use, was put on hold. And so I don't know the details of that. I'm wondering if you could summarize that for me. And then the only other two comments I had, I'm hoping that we can get back to the rail dependent use in the upcoming year at some point, as well as I want to reemphasize, Oliver, that I'm really looking for all the tools available pertaining to stormwater, our shoreline management, anything that impacts our critical lands, our wetlands, even if there are impacts that are coming from within cities, annexed property. I think it would make sense that we do have some influence, if not direct jurisdiction, especially in those bodies of water that may be fully enclosed within a city's property. So in any case, could you just summarize the agricultural review that was placed on hold?
Thank you, Councillor. I will be as brief as I can, and other councillors will also chime in. The reason that was at the time, and also Lindsay is still on with us, there was a discussion about the fact that the courts and the legislature have not defined what they mean by area-wide ag analysis or resource analysis. And we had a series of work sessions with council and provided the council the pros and cons of reopening our resource designations up. One of the issues is that you can open it up, go through the work criteria, and you find out that there are more areas that should have been designated as agriculture and you didn't. You will be required to designate those areas as agriculture. Imagine someone who have had Rural 5 or Rural 10, and you go through that process and you determine that they meet the criteria for ag, and you're telling them now that their property should be designated as agriculture. If you go through that study and you refuse to do so, you will be exposing the county to potential appeal. That is what Pierce County experienced, and they were forced to designate more ag land. And that is one of the dangers of opening that up. So with that conversation, they decided, well, can we really, because there's two schools of thought. One is that ag is no longer viable in Clark County. And there is another school of thought that ag is still very viable here in Clark County, whether it is done individually or by CSA or other means. So the conversation then shifted to, can we really look at assessing the agricultural economic viability here in Clark County? And I recall that the council's office, led by Lindsay, prepared an RFP, and for some reason, I don't know whether it was due to cost or timing, we know that the ag census will not come out until very late. So that was the reason that was put on hold. The council have not made any decision one way or the other on how to proceed. That's, in a nutshell, is why that is still on hold. In the case of the freight rail dependent uses, I will leave that to the PA's office to brief you on how that should proceed, because you are aware that there is a litigation currently on the table. So I don't know the outcome of that. So I'm not privy to that. So I think having a conversation with the PA's office on the freight rail dependent uses going forward will be in order. So that is my quick synopsis of why those two issues are still on hold. I don't know, Lindsay, if you have anything to add.
I don't know. Oliver did a good job of summarizing it, and I think the final piece, the litigation piece, is really key. The issue came about before we had the decision from the Court of Appeals, and that subsequent decision from the Court of Appeals has really tabled this for the long term. And I think that it's certainly an issue that the council could revisit if we wanted to address, because the Court of Appeals didn't address the question of what constitutes an area-wide agricultural assessment. But the impetus and desire to do it isn't really there due to that Court of Appeals decision. And so the risks of doing it, as Oliver discussed, I think definitely would outweigh the gain from looking at that. But again, happy to set up a meeting for you to talk to Chris Cook if you want more details on that.
Okay, thank you. That's far more detail than I was hoping for, but I appreciate that primer on the issue. Thank you.
It does explain the issue well. Thank you, both of you, for chiming in there.
Thank you, Councillor. So with that, I'm anticipating your approval, both the land use and the transportation for 2021.
Do we have approval of the council? I approve. I see a thumbs up. Okay, and here's, I think, okay, great. Thank you, councilors.
Thank you, councilors.
Your approval, Oliver. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll put this on our web page for the public to see what we'll be working on, and I will. I don't know if Rob is online, but I will share with them that the council approved our work program. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Moving on then to House Bill 1590. Are you handling that, Lindsay?
I can certainly provide a background, I think. Go ahead.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
I can certainly provide a background. And then I think that the idea was for the council to discuss whether this was something that we wanted to move forward with. This is the 0.1% sales tax increase that, as a result of House Bill 1590, can now be done councilmanically. It does not need to go to a vote of the people in order to be imposed. Unlike the 1406 Affordable Housing Fund, this tax would be an additional tax. It is not credited against the state sales tax. And there are some additional restrictions on the use of this tax in terms of the proportion that it has to be used for particular things. But the two do overlap significantly in terms of what they can be used for. But the 0.1 tax, of course, is significantly higher than the 0.0146, which is what the affordable housing tax that is credited against the state sales tax can be used for. But Clark County could use both funding sources for a particular project or projects. And 1590 also allows for interlocal agreements, which my understanding the city of Vancouver is moving forward with this. And so we could enter into an interlocal agreement in order to be able to jointly agree on using the funds. So the question for the council is this something that you want to discuss moving forward with?
Madam Chair. I think you said go ahead, you're muted. Okay. And I asked that we bring this up again. I think we all received a letter from the BIA of Clark County expressing some support to look further into this matter. And I've had some conversations with them as well as some other groups as well about how this money could potentially be used. And we had a conversation with the city of Vancouver as well about this. The building industry pays, about 30% of the sales tax. So the fact that they are actually supportive of looking at this. I think warrants at least us taking a deeper look at what this money could be used for. It's very similar in line as far as the dollars that it could generate to the mental health sales tax. And I think when we look at the programs that the mental health sales tax is able to fund, there's a lot of things that we do that provide a lot of good for the community that we couldn't do if we didn't have that 0.1%. And that was, taken 12, 15 years ago for that. So I think this is a program that could similarly make a real impact on issues of affordable housing. Lindsay's right. There's some sideboards to it. There's also there's some broadness in terms of being able to approach the issue of affordable housing from several different angles. So I think it would be at least worth considering further and talking with Vanessa's group in a work session, hearing what might a panel of some folks from industry as well as from mental health and from chemical dependency, planning, development, community services, similar to what we have for the Mental Health Sales Tax Advisory Board. What might a group similar to that look like to look at how could these funds be used, and is there enough benefit there for Clark County to consider doing this? So I would be supportive of having a work session on this issue.
Councilor, you want to weigh in?
Yeah, Madam Chair. Let me pull this up here. Yeah, I think when this originally came across the first time, I was really sort of more in favor of having the City of Vancouver take the lead on this. And I didn't spend much time at that point. I hadn't read much of the bill and didn't really dig into the details. And since then I have, and also have had conversations with the BIA and the Realtors Association and their support of the county being the lead on this rather than the City of Vancouver. And as I look at the legislation and the language, the affordable housing and facilities, providing housing programs, behavioral health facilities, veterans, seniors, unaccompanied homeless youth, domestic violence survivors. So looking at really where this is targeted and that it's tied to affordable housing, I think it does make more sense for the county to take the lead on this. We've just established our joint group with the county and the city with regard to homelessness, reviewing homelessness policies and opportunities to address that. I mean, if anybody's been through Portland in the last year or two, it's an embarrassment. And whatever we can do here to manage this affordable housing crisis and to help those who need behavioral health assistance and additional financial assistance, I think we need to do that here. I also want to make sure, though, that if we go forward, I know we were talking about a work session, but ultimately, if we go forward, I'd like to see that we tie this. We don't just assess this 0.1% without tying it to specific action and specific programs per se. So I know we've got our housing options study going. Maybe we can tie this somewhere to the results we get out of that study. And we do have some framework with the mental health sales tax. Maybe we use that. But that if we go forward with this in 2021, we really do the work in getting parameters around how this money would be used. So if we're talking about a work session and digging more into this, I would be in favor of that as well.
Other councilors?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
Yes, I also am in favor of moving this forward to a work session. I think that the need we know is great in the county, and our resources and ability to address the need are limited. So this provides an opportunity to directly attack this and make a dent in this problem, actually potentially make a very sizable dent. And I agree with what I've heard from the other two counselors as far as needing a group that can really talk about how to make it as effective as possible. And I think this represents a great opportunity to bring stakeholders and community folks like the BIA, the realtors, to the table and be a part of helping us develop some innovative solutions here. There are definite guidelines we have to follow within the law, but there's also a lot of flexibility here. So a possibility to really allow leveraging of the different resources that we have in this community to make a really positive impact. So if we move forward to a work session, I definitely want to talk about the possibilities for these funds, but also what that managing advisory group, similar, we have a structure for the mental health sales tax that advises us. That is largely made up of department heads and county staff. And I think there's an opportunity here to do it a little differently, since the county isn't in the business of building. So we do need those outside resources. So this provides a great opportunity for us to bring those folks to the table to really figure out how to start this in the right way to make a positive difference quickly.
Okay, Councilor Medvigi, did you have?
I just had a quick question of Lindsay, and I may have missed it. I thought the county missed or intentionally missed the deadline for taking advantage of that 0.1% tax increase. I thought we had discussed this before and didn't have the will to go forward with that, especially in this pandemic year. We have a lot of resources that we're spending in so many different ways. Certainly an advisory group with stakeholders and BIA being the lead in that outside stakeholder group would be a good thing. But I thought we had already decided not to go after additional taxes, whereas Vancouver has. What is the deadline for the county going after additional taxes?
So there was a deadline of September 30th of this year, and that's what you're remembering with the conversation before. That was the deadline for the county to impose it across the entire county. So had the council acted at that time, we could have enacted the 0.1 countywide. But at this point, after September 30th, the cities can enact it on their own. And then if the county enacts, it's only applicable to the unincorporated area. And, outside of City of Vancouver really is what we're talking about here. So the city can do theirs, and then we would do ours outside of that jurisdiction. And that's where the interlocal comes in to coordinate and work together.
That answer your question?
Yes, so I'm all in favor of working together. I don't stomach looking for another revenue stream to add to this issue. I think we have a lot of work to do with how we're applying our money now. And certainly the more input we get from the stakeholders, the better. I just want to make sure that moving forward, we're not committing to trying to collect even more taxes than we just voted on yesterday.
I have another question, if I might.
Cyril.
So if we go forward to a work session, Lindsay, could we make sure that we have as much information as possible around the county portion and the City of Vancouver portion, and what that might look like if we were going to have some sort of MOU or collaborative agreement of some kind?
Yes. Yeah. And definitely in terms of what we'll get the numbers in terms of what revenue would be expected, what the city would be expected to have, and how that interlocal would tie together. Yes. The only question I would have in terms of the work session is if the council wanted to have this on for hearing in 2020, we would need to send out the notice next week to have it on for hearing December 15th. We could then have the work session in early December, and the council could pull the item by December 15th, but then it would be at least eligible to have a hearing on December 15th. And we would still have time to have that work session in those first couple of weeks of December. Otherwise, we can certainly schedule a work session anytime, and then the hearing would be in 2021.
My preference would be not to do it in 2020 and put it on the December agenda. One of the reasons being is that I will, if this work session were held the first week of December and into the second week, I actually am scheduled to be out of town. I would definitely want to hear the work session. I too, my recollection was, as Councillor Medvigi's, that we had decided to allow the City of Vancouver, who would probably be the most effective at collecting this and dealing with this, I too want to work with them. That would be great. However, I at this point in time, I'm not in favor of extracting more money from our citizens in this manner. But I certainly would like to hear about it, all of the details and how it would, what it would be, how much it would be, what kinds of things we could do, all that is, encompassed in this bill, as well as the revenue it might create and how we could use that, and what the MOU would look like with the city of Vancouver, etc.
Lindsay, could we do the work session on the 9th and share? Are you back in town on the 9th?
No, I think I come back that night.
I would also ask that we put it off into the new year and schedule it in the normal course.
We have availability to do it on the 9th. Alternatively, if the council wanted to, we could set it for a Thursday or Friday. Typically, we have them on a Wednesday, but it's up to the council when you would want to have it scheduled.
If there are other counselors who do want to do it within this year, I would be happy to make those arrangements and adjustments to my schedule.
So that way, are you talking to Lindsay, then it'd be like the 10th or the 11th then?
Right. I think doing it the day before was on the 14th probably would be too close. So you'd need to have it on the 10th, Thursday the 10th or Friday the 11th. And then the hearing would be that Tuesday the 15th. But we would have to send out the notice. Given the Thanksgiving holiday and the 2-week notice requirement, we'd have to get out the notice to the Columbian next week. So it would be noticed as a hearing and scheduled for the 15th, but then on December 15th, after the work session, the council could pull the item just like you pull any other agenda item.
So would you, thinking about the work session, would you anticipate having representatives at all from the city of Vancouver, or not?
If the council wanted to invite, Eric or some of the city council members in terms of what their intent are as it would relate to an interlocal, I think we certainly could extend that invitation. That's up to the council whether you'd want to do that. We've had some preliminary discussions. The first meeting of the joint executive board, it was discussed in terms of the city at least expressing a willingness to consider an interlocal agreement. But we didn't have any discussions in terms of exactly what that would look like. So I'm not sure how far the city is, but it's a possibility. Yeah.
So I'm interested in just trying to get, and again, the work session would be helpful, trying to get clarity on, our jurisdiction and the city's jurisdiction and the difference between us, purposefully missing this deadline in September and where that leaves us going forward if we were to implement the 0.1, the 1/10 of 1%, 1/10 of 1%. And I don't know that we, need to dig into it too much here, but I am interested in that clarity.
So now that we're past the September 30th deadline, the way that it would be is the county could impose it certainly in the unincorporated area, and then within the boundaries of any city that hadn't adopted it. But the cities can then later adopt it on their own. We wouldn't, had we done it before September 30th, we would have had the entire county, and the cities couldn't have enacted it on their own. But if at some point city of Washougal wanted to enact it, they would do that, and then the revenue would go to them, and we could talk about an interlocal with them to bring them into the conversation as well.
So Lindsay, September 30 was really more of a right of first refusal than a deadline. Is that
correct?
A different way of saying it? Okay.
Yeah.
But that going forward, if we were to implement, it would just be for the unincorporated area.
It would be for the unincorporated area and within the
Yes.
city boundaries who hadn't enacted it. So most likely the smaller cities, none of them have enacted it to my knowledge thus far, except for City of Vancouver moving forward with theirs.
So they did, the city of Vancouver did enact it.
I will need to check. I think it would be on for this Monday.
I think they did. I think they just did
Okay.
this past Monday. And in our conversation at the joint city policy group, they talked about they did want to make sure that they did implement it so they could start collecting at the first of the year, but that they are interested. They do believe that a regional approach for this handling this large issue is appropriate. So they are willing and interested to talk about an interlocal to maximize the benefit of these funds for the entire region.
Chair O'Brien, this is Kathleen. We did have staff just look briefly at the council's calendar, and there is availability on the 10th at 9 a.m. Obviously, I have not talked to Vanessa or any of her staff, but if that might be an open option for the council if you choose to do a work session.
I would be supportive of that.
And I'll support it. I don't know which way I'm going on this right now. I really do want to get more information on it. So if we could schedule a work session, I would appreciate it. I just I learned some things today that I didn't think I was really clear about. So I would be interested in learning a little bit more if possible. But I'd also be supportive of just putting it on the agenda, and then we can pull it if we need to.
I'm supportive of that too.
Okay. Okay, Councilor. Okay. So the 10th, finding out if Vanessa, if her group has the ability to meet at 9 on the 10th, which is a Thursday. Okay, moving on then to councilor reports.
Yes, Madam Chair. Yes, as we've actually mentioned a couple of times already, the city and county homelessness joint group did meet earlier this week for the first time since both bodies ratified the agreement to have this group. And we heard from Vanessa about the work that her office is doing, working with Vancouver Housing Authority on using some new emergency shelter grant money from the Department of Commerce to help increase shelter, and also about the status of winter shelter and the uses of the funding that we provide for that. So it was largely about getting updates, and moving forward, the group's going to continue to talk about the structure and the work of the group to, as was said in the charter and in the meetings that we've had about it, to identify gaps and how we can potentially work together to fill them. So.
Other reports?
Madam Chair, just briefly, and this is more for anybody who might be listening than it is for us, but I've been attending the restaurant roundtable calls on Thursday mornings, and a lot of discussion has taken place, especially this last week, about outdoor dining and additional restrictions from the governor. And he has recently put out new guidelines for outdoor dining, and I've been talking with Kathleen and our folks in community development. So if there are restaurants in unincorporated Clark County that want to do temporary structures for outdoor dining, we're going to do our best to get those through the system very quickly, very cheaply. So rest assured, I guess, or I want to provide some sense of confidence that if you're looking to get some assistance from the county with regard to outdoor structures for dining, that we want to work with you to do that. So it's fortunately in this particular case, we have a little bit more flexibility than Oregon does with regard to our restaurants. So I just wanted to get that out.
Okay, I have a little bit of a report, and actually kind of a request that came, and I don't know, Councilor Lance, perhaps it was talked about at this homeless policy group That's the meeting that you're talking about you just recently had, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I received both Mayor McInerney Ogle and I both received a letter from the Faith Partners Housing, and they're requesting actually that they be able to be expand this newly formed group to include Faith Partners. I don't know how many there are on this group. I was looking for the new setup in my file work here and I didn't find it, but I just wanted to make that known that they are asking that the Faith Partners be more involved in this group, and they do commend, setting this up, etc., but are asking that they be involved as well.
Well, that's great to know, and we will certainly talk about that. The documents that we had do allow, but what was passed was basically this group of just city and county officials at this moment to start it and to just get it moving and get some structure there, but with the intent, not just the ability, but the intent to expand it to include community partners as well as potentially folks representing other cities. So that's fantastic. And they're a great group. So it'd be good to involve them.
Okay, great. Thanks. Any other council reports? Nope. Okay, work session requests. We got one.
Have any? Okay,
Yeah.
Other than the one that was discussed earlier, we don't have any work session requests, but I do have a quick question for the council. With next Wednesday being the day before Thanksgiving, I just wanted administratively, do you want to take the week off next week to enjoy an extended Thanksgiving holiday, or would you like to still meet for council time?
What's your pleasure, councilors?
I certainly don't want to interrupt all my Thanksgiving celebrations that I'll be having by myself. No, I'm available for any meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we don't have anything, Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, Kathleen, you said you didn't have anything on the agenda at this point for next week, correct?
Correct. Right now, there's no agenda items.
I think we'd be fine not then, but I'm open if anyone else wants to.
Yeah, I agree. If we don't have anything pressing, I'm available, but I'd be happy to have the day off.
Same.
Okay, so and if anything pressing does come up, I'd be open to having it as well. I'll be in town, so so we can. So tentatively, we are going to take a vacation next, extend our Thanksgiving vacation holiday by not having a work session next. I'm not work session, council time next Wednesday. So if anything pressing comes up, let us know, please. Okay. Policy issues, Lindsay, anything for me on that?
Two quick things for you. One, as I emailed you, there is a work group, a tax structure work group that the legislature is having. And Josh and I thought it would be a good idea to include a letter regarding the sales tax leakage to make sure that we keep that hopefully at the forefront of their minds as they're considering broad changes to the tax structure. So I sent out a draft letter, email me and other staff directly with any feedback that you have, and then we'll get that letter out to the group as soon as we can. The second one is we did receive a request. So in August of this year, the city of Woodland voted to annex into the Clark Cowlitz Fire Protection District number 15. And they have a request. Their board of commissioners voted pursuant to RCW to change their name to the Clark Cowlitz Fire Rescue. But again, pursuant to RCW, this has to be approved by the county council. So this will be coming forward, but if you have any questions about that, let me know. I just didn't want it to be a surprise when it comes forward.
Thank you, Lindsay. So who are they combining with then?
So the city of Woodland annexed into the existing fire protection district number 15. And so because Woodland has, part of Woodland is within Cowlitz County, that automatically changed the name to the Clark Cowlitz Fire Protection District number 15, but the Board of Commissioners wanted to change that to the Fire Rescue.
Okay, thank you. It's the which district, the number 15, so thank you.
Could I ask
Councilman
Lindsay a question? Thank you. And I probably should have brought this up earlier in combination with a request as well as correspondence with others. So Lindsay and I had correspondence on looking at grants and other avenues, both with DNR and some of the federal agencies, to see whether or not we could get more movement on broadband out into the county. And we've discussed that a little bit as to whether or not CARES Act could fund some of that. I'm wondering if we've made any progress. Are we ready to talk about that in a work session? And the most recent correspondence I've had wasn't with constituents, but was with, although as a matter of course, the ports are somewhat our constituents. You know, Richfield has gone ahead and kind of pushed forward on wiring their port area, and the other ports, and I heard from Camas Washougal, is very interested in joining with the county and seeing what we can do to increase connectivity throughout the county. So I'm wondering if, Lindsay, do you have an update on that? Are we ready to start digging into that a little bit more?
So good news and bad news. The good news is I think this will be a topic for the legislature that'll be at the forefront of their minds. The bad news, of course, is that they don't convene until January. But what we're hearing from WASAG, what I'm hearing from other folks, is that the question of rural broadband access, it's been an important topic for the last few years, but COVID has certainly brought it to a critical turning point in terms of the need for people to be able to work from home and do schooling from home. In the meantime, I know that there are some programs that libraries are renting out mobile hotspots that people can rent for free. So there are some new programs like that in the community that folks can take advantage of to at least get them to a point where we would have a more permanent long-term solution.
So not wanting to pile on, maybe it could wait until the new year, especially once the legislature starts meeting, but I certainly would like to address this topic and see what progress we can make in all the different avenues that are out there for perhaps a grant request and or maybe CARES Act funding if we still had the option to spend any of it.
Okay, and just remember, counselors, take a look at that letter that Lindsay's put together. I saw it in passing, but I have not looked carefully at it, but I'm sure it probably hits most of what we'd like to say after our conversation yesterday. So
I did take a look at it. I thought it was great. Thank you, Lindsay.
Thanks. Okay, if that covers the policy issues, you don't, yeah. Okay, so we'll look at that email and get it back to you ASAP.
Yep, that's it for me.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, we are going to adjourn this meeting and we're going to go into executive session for 3 pending litigations for 40 minutes and 2 potential litigations for 25 minutes. And Kathleen, do we expect to have action afterwards?
Yes. So what you'll do is go into the meeting that I sent out for executive session, and then if there is action, then you'll exit that and return to this meeting and reconvene.
Okay. Thank you very much. We'll see you on the other side, counselors. We are back in session for Clark County Council time for November the 18th, 2020. I think we have a motion by Councilor Olson.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I move to approve the request, defense, and indemnification of Clark County employee named as defendant in the matter of Igor Terekhov, that's spelled Tyeryekhov, versus Alex O'Hearn and Clark County.
Is there a second?
Second. Oh.
It's been moved and seconded. It has been moved and seconded to do just as Councilor Olson said. Is there further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
The motion passes. Thank you. With that action, we are adjourned.